This is still Johnston and Packet Tracer 6.7.5.2. And what we want to do is we want to label this network. So let me go ahead and get that put up here for you. So here's the whole network labeled out. And let's go to the next step here. And we're basically going to need 15 hosts and 30 hosts. Then also 4 hosts for the routers. Because with routers you need 2 hosts, basically 2 ports here. And you also need a network address and a broadcast address. That's why you need 4 hosts. And in variable subnetting, that would be this, the subnet mask with the ending in 252. But of course, in this packet tracer, they say not to do variable subnetting. So basically, we're going to be doing everything based upon the biggest amount of hosts here, which would be 30 hosts. So basically, we have 30 hosts, and in order to get a full network address, we need to also have the network address and broadcast, so that'd be 32 hosts. So we would be able to do 0 through 31 as our first subnet, because that would contain all of those, and 0 is considered a host in itself also. So our next step, we're going to go ahead and we're going to be breaking this down, and they have that right here in this instructions, and I also have a cheat sheet that I'll open up to let us configure this whole network easily. So here's my sheet. So basically, if you filled in all those hosts that they want you to do, this is what you would come up with, and it makes it easy just to type it all out just like this. You can copy and paste their activity. That's basically all I did, and I put it into my own sheet here. And because we basically have the subnet as 0 through 31, we can configure our subnet mask to be .224 for each one of our subnet mask, because we'd be going up to 32 bits. So we would have the 128, the 64-bit, and the 32 left over. So basically, it would look like something like this. It would be /27, which in their example, they originally told us /24, so that's where they wanted to start off with. And so this would break down to our 4 networks that they wanted us to create. And since it went from 0 to 31, next one would go to 32 to 63, and then 64 to 95, and then 96 to 127. Now let's go ahead and configure this. We'll start with PC1. We'll go from left to right to make it easier. And our port will be the 192.168.1.62, which we figured out right here from what they asked us. And then we have that .224 right here from what we configured here earlier for our subnet mask. So it's 255.255.255.224. And we make sure everything's turned on. We'll go to our settings, and our gateway will be the next port over, which the switch doesn't count because it just broadcasts everywhere. So the port on this R1 router right here would be 192.168.1.33. So that'll be what we'll be configuring here in a minute, but that'll be our gateway to the next networks over here. So we'll go ahead and get out of this, so that's all saved. We'll go to our router, R1, and then R1 will configure our fast Ethernet, which is that FA0/0, and that was this one right here from what they're asking us. And the first valid host address, so that'd be the 192.168.1.33 from subnet 2. So in subnet 2, that would be that one right there, which actually you can see right up here. And then in our router also, we're going to use the .224. And now let's go ahead and configure our serial port. And our serial port will be the next one that they're asking for, the first valid host address and the third subnet. So right here would be 65, since 64 is the network address. And then we still have the .224 for our subnets, and it's turned on right here. And then let's go ahead and go to our static routes. This will be in the next part of the whole packet tracer, but I thought we'd just cover it now. So I usually like to make a default gateway or actually a default route um, to go through, so that our packets will go through no matter what, and then we can also do our specific routes too. So default gateway, or the default route I mean, would be 0.0.0.0, and our mask on that would be 0.0.0.0 because that covers everything. And our next hop would be the next router right here, the S/0/0/0/0. And of course that one will be this one right here. So we're going to put in the 192.168.1.94. And we'll just add that in there. Then I also want to add in that without the default gateway. So I want to put the 192.168.1.64 because that's part of this subnet that we're in right now, subnet 3. And then we're going to have our same subnet mask. So we're going to add that in here, and that's how we'll get this. And then also, because that's making us go from left to right, we also want to go from right to left. So what we're going to end up doing is we need to get to this network right here. So .62 falls in this one right here to subnet 2, so the networking address should be .32. So I'm going to put that as .32. And the next hop would be the .62 right there. And sometimes people will put the next hop as the broadcast address sometimes too. So they'll put like the .63. Alright, so now let's go ahead and save this, because you always want to save your configuration in case the power goes out. And then we'll go to R2 right here. And let's go ahead and configure the next port, which is right here to S0/0. And our IP address, which when we configured it, is right here. It'll be the last valid host address on our third subnet, so right here. So it'd be 94. So .1.94. And then we're going to use that same subnet mask with the .224. Everything's turned on. And one of our next activities, they'll ask you to make the clock rate 64,000. So we'll make this 64,000. Let's also check R1. And on that one, on serial 0 here, we'll make that 64,000 also. So that's all set right there. It's turned on. And then now let's go ahead and do our fast Ethernet port. And this one is the next one right there. First valid host on the fourth subnet. So it's right here. So first valid host would be 97. Because remember, 96 is the network address. So we put that in there. And we're going to use our same subnet mask with the .224. And then our next step, basically, I want to go ahead and make sure we have our default static route here too, which I make the default route to go to the next router. So the next router would be right here, 192.168.1.65. And the network that it's on, actually if we're going to default route, we'll just do zeros right here. And then you just add that, and that's how we get this right here for our default route. And then we can make a specific route too, because that .65 is on the .64 network. So we'll put 192.168.1.64, and we're going to use our same subnet mask that we were using earlier. And then we'll add it in here. And then we also want to go in the other direction. So we want to go to this computer right here. So we'll go ahead, and that 126 is on the subnet 4, so it's going to be .96, which is the network address. It's the same subnet mask right here, since everything's the same on our network here. And our next hop will of course be to 126. which is right here. So it'll be sent over this direction. And if there's anything wrong, of course the default route will send our packets to the next router. So that's our default route. And then let's go ahead and save this. And we just double check everything's on, the serial's on, and 64,000 between the two routers. So that's all set right there. And now let's go ahead and set up PC2. And on this one, the fast Ethernet would be the one we found right here, which is the last valid host address in the 4 subnet, which would be 126, since 127 is the broadcast address that connects to that whole subnet right there. Now, we have that right here, so it's a .1.126, and then our same subnet mask a .224. And we make sure everything's turned on, go to our settings, and of course our gateway is going to be this port right here on our router. So it's going to be .1.97, which I have written right there. And of course on our PC1, just double check that the gateway's right on that one. So it's right here, so .1.33, which is this port on the router. And it's all set. Now let's go ahead, and what we'll do is we'll send a packet across the network. So we'll go from PC1 to PC2. Let's go ahead and see what happens. And just make sure for every router that you work on that you always save the settings. And it looks like our configuration works. It says successful right here. And also, we'll go ahead and what we'll do is we'll send a packet from this computer to that one and test it that way too. And see what happens. Alright, so it looks like everything's successful. I went through everything and we're good there. And as you'll notice, this says completion 100%. Check the results, and everything has a check mark and it's good to go.